About 12 months ago, I got a message in my inbox. I'd really like to reconnect with you. I've avoided talking to people that I knew, and particularly people that I've hurt for a while now. But I've had some big announcements, and I'd really like to share them with you and share our delight with you. And I've got to say, I actually felt like I got a shot of adrenaline. It sounds pretty innocuous to you guys probably, but it really felt like I had got a shot to the heart and my heart was going to jump out of my chest. It kind of felt like it was a new beginning. So the middle of this story actually starts back about 15 years ago with a pretty devastating ending for me. I had to face the fact that I was not going to be able to have a child of my own. I had to make a huge decision, kind of devastating decision, to stop trying. We tried assisted fertility technology and nothing was working. So I had to make this impossible decision to stop and to give up my dream. So it was a pretty dark time. It was a very dark time, sorry. Nobody told me that you could grieve so deeply and for so long about something that you've never had. There were a few years where I actually avoided being in positions where I would be around families with small children. Just couldn't deal. And then I'd been invited to a first birthday party. And I couldn't get out of it. These people were some of my oldest friends, and I couldn't think of a way out. But it was at that party that I had a casual conversation with somebody that got me moving forward again. Maybe, just maybe, if I couldn't have a child, maybe I could help look after a child or children where families couldn't do it on their own. So we became foster carers. We did respite for a few years. We had a parade of children in and out of our house on weekends. Some were regulars. They'd come through once a month for a weekend. We had one-off. We had phone calls in the middle of the night saying, can you take an emergency overnight and drop them at the department in the morning. We had weeks here and there where we'd have a child who couldn't go away on holiday with a foster carer for whatever reason. And it was good. It was actually a really good time. My grief kind of shrunk and I ended up with a tiny little nugget that I could carry comfortably with me. She, from the message, was one of our foster kids, one of our respite kids. She would come out once a month and spend a weekend. And for that 48 hours, she was the focus of our life. Then when she turned 12, her life imploded. Her foster placement broke down and we were asked if we would take her in as an extended respite. So she came out to stay with us and we sat and watched in our lounge room while a department worker basically told her that she couldn't go back to the home the place that she thought of as home. She'd lived there since she was 6 years old. And we watched that kid's face and world just crumble. And in a matter of a few days, we actually became the people that were most stable in her life. So when the question was asked, it was a no-brainer, basically. Yes, of course, she could come and live with us for as long as she needed or wanted to. So we inherited a 12-year-old, fully formed 12-year-old girl. And all that comes with that. It felt like overnight there were boobs appearing, there were periods starting. She was in grade 7, she was finishing primary school, starting high school. Boys became extremely interesting. And we were going through legal stuff with her, supporting her through some legal stuff. And in the middle of that, she's trying to deal with the grief of losing the people that she thought of as family. So for the next 5 years, we hung on, basically. We dealt with the shit where it landed. We celebrated where we could. We made wrong turns. We self-corrected and got back on the path. And I guess through it all, my partner and I had made the commitment and we were all in. And we grew to love her. Sorry, I'm just going to take a mouthful of water. So she was about to turn 17 and it all came to a pretty grinding halt. And I can't even tell you why. I think there were lots of little things that all came to a head all at the same time and she was gone. She no longer wanted to live in our house. So we had some big decisions to make. We did some mediation, all that sort of thing. But when it came down to it, the department was willing to try and force her to come home. But we figured that we needed to let her go. We would rather maintain some sort of relationship with her going on than force her to come home and we all be miserable for another year and then she leaves at 18 anyway. So that was another impossible decision to make and I felt like I'd lost a child. So for the next couple of years after she left, we had periods of time where she would get in contact with us and it would all be good and then she would disappear off the face of the earth and then she'd come back like nothing had happened. I guess I learnt over that time to invest less. I came to the point where I was able to release any expectations I had of her and of any contact that we had. It was nice while it lasted, but I wasn't willing to bet that it was going to continue. People would say to me, you know, at some point she'll realise and she'll come back to you. And I got to the point where I could actually say, or not. And that was okay. I guess, again, I had another little nugget of grief that was comfortable to carry around. And then this message out of the blue, and this one felt different. We hadn't seen or heard from her in 2 years. But this message kind of had a different feeling, a little bit of feeling of hope. So, of course, we said, yes, we'll meet up with you. We'd love to make contact with you again. And we debated, my partner and I were sort of debating, what is this? What are these announcements? What is this delight she wants to share? And we drove up to the house, up to her house, and I turned to my partner and I said, I'm going to be fucking gutted if it's not a baby. So we sat in the car for a minute and got our heads together and we opened the gate and walked down the path and she opened the door. And she stood there in the doorway and I felt like my heart was going to explode because standing behind her was the man who was her husband and perched on her hip was a perfect red-haired tiny human. And I guess that moment for me felt like the true beginning of this story.